Hi, everybody. We're about to talk about dialogue. We've introduced everybody, and that's what you missed out on by not being here. But this is James and Randy and Allison, and we are going to run some generative workshops pretty soon. And so let's talk about dialogue for a little bit. And the number one thing I want to talk about with you about dialogue is that, and I think you know this already because you have to take 510 and 520 before you come to this class, but realistic dialogue in writing is not the same thing as real dialogue that happens when you speak. And I think you all probably know that. But one of the most important things, as you know, is if you were to write down a conversation that happened and then transcribe it onto the page, it wouldn't come across as realistic speaking because we experience speaking on the page differently than we do when we hear somebody speaking. So it's important that you keep that in mind when you're writing. And I think the most important thing I learned, and this was from David Gates, who back in the day had like a runner-up to the Pulitzer in 94, I think. And now I just forgot the name of the novel. Anyway, he was one of my teachers at Bennington. And he said this, and it's true. Characters in novels and short stories, when they speak dialogue to each other, they aren't good listeners and they don't speak directly to each other. So somebody might say, man, it's freezing today, isn't it? And then the person coming in, like to answer would be like, I can't believe that my toes are hurting. You know, like they don't answer each other directly in the way the dialogue is happening. Instead, they kind of talk beside each other and a little bit past each other. And so dialogue rarely is somebody asks a question and the person answering says, oh, exactly what you wanted to know. And I think if you can pick up on that for your dialogue and understand that they're talking in the same general area, usually they stick to the same topic, but sometimes characters will be obtuse and just literally not even engage in the conversation thread that the first character is trying to have. If you can recognize that and play with that, you'll be surprised how realistic your dialogue is going to sound. Hi, Christine. Everybody, this is Christine. She came to our first writing workshop, and this is the second. Can you do a brief introduction? We're about to go into the generative writing workshops.
Okay. Hi, I'm Christine. I live in DC. I'm about halfway through my program at SNHU. I mostly usually focus on nonfiction, but so this is a little bit different for me, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Great. Thanks, Christine. Awesome. Okay, so we were just talking a bit about dialogue, and I know you came in on the most important piece of advice I had. And then for setting, I just want to back up for a second I know you probably all turned in your work for Module 3, and I promise that I am trying to get your 2-2s out today. I've had a very weird week. But in setting, two things that you're graded on in SNHU is the descriptive setting, but also sensory detail, and how do you bring us into setting using your sensory detail. And one thing you'll hear me saying over and over again when I give you the recorded feedback I usually do for the milestones is, I want you to tell me what something tastes like. What does it smell like? What does it feel like under your hands? And so when we write, we quite typically will say what something looks like, and we might have sound. Those are our two sort of most engaged senses typically as people. But what makes us really be in scene is to have these other senses engaged too. And then as readers, we feel as if we're maybe a part of that character, or we just know what's happening in the location better. We know if we're cold. We know if there's a bitter taste left in the back of our mouth. And then my favorite one, and you'll be surprised how much mileage you can get out of this one, and it usually functions both as sensory detail and as a rhetorical device, is to take a sense and apply it somewhere where it doesn't belong. Like, she could smell the taste of buttered popcorn or something. And that's called synesthesia, where you say like, she could see how smooth the silk was on his skin. That's a sense of touch, but you're doing it through sight. I'm not very good on the fly. You'll hear me saying that all the time too when I grade your work. So those are not great ones, but synesthesia is so fun to play with. He could hear the taste of the mushy bananas. I don't know. That's a very bad one. But that kind of thing is really effective in creative writing. So I want to encourage you to try out experimenting with synesthesia because it's fun and it creates this sort of, it's with rhetorical devices, especially really good metaphors and synesthesia or really good sensory details, that magic starts to bubble up out of your work. And there's lots of other places for magic too, but those two are almost guaranteed. So I really want to encourage you to try them. So do you all have any questions for me about what's coming up? And one more thing with dialogue that I should say is just please try to be really simple in your dialogue tags. The tags shouldn't be doing a lot of work for you. They should just sort of be acknowledging who's speaking. And I know for a long time, I really liked to fancy up the verbs I was using for my dialogue tags, and they aren't realistic. And so, for David Gates again, and I feel like this is a bit strict, but he would only let me say said. And even when they asked the question, they were only allowed to say, like, I wonder what we're going to do, she said. That's like what she's asking. So just really force yourself to as much simplicity as you can, and then very judiciously go back. And if something needs to be other than said, change it, but know that, that's a really important choice. Instead of being descriptive with all of your verbs, default to said or asked, and then see if you really need something more. Or if you can get away with not having a tag, do that. Okay, any questions for me? All right, I have a really fun writing prompt planned for today, and it's called Impromptu Writing. I'm going to pull it over here on the side so I can see it. Okay, I mean improv writing, sorry. And for those of you who haven't been here before, if you start to write, like when I start the timer and you're like, your brain's like, I can't, just start writing over and over again. I don't know what to write. And just, or, some repetitive short phrase like that, that's like, I don't know. Your brain will get so angry with you, it'll write something. So if your brain tries to freeze up on you, you be mean back to it and it'll give in and you'll be able to write. So try something like that. And before we write, I'm just going to have us take a couple breaths, but first I'm going to explain the writing prompt so that you're ready. Then I'm going to woo-woo us with a couple of breaths, and then we'll do the first prompt. Okay, so it's called Improv Writing, and one of my cohort members taught me this, and I just love it. So what's going to happen, and I decided why not just take our textbook to do it, right? So what happens is I will begin you with the phrase, "It was fun being." So that's going to happen. I'll put all this in the chat so you'll be able to see it. And then I'm going to come in like every 15 or 20 seconds with a word, like I'm going to flip it open. And if it were to happen now, I would be like 20th. That's not very helpful. I landed on the biography of Ernest Hemingway. But, I'm landing on all the biographies. No good. Vigil, say I would come up with vigil. So I will just flip the page, point with my finger. This is very random. But when I come up with a new word, I need you to try to insert it into your writing. So this is fun, and weird things happen, and I think you'll enjoy it. This one may be harder to put dialogue in, but if you can, it would be great. If you don't, it's fine. And then we'll write for about 5 minutes with me popping in. And then when I say at the end of 5 minutes, I'm going to give you 1 more minute to wrap things up without me interrupting you. And so it'll be 6 minutes total. And then hopefully you'll want to share what you wrote after we finish with each other. So we're gonna do that. Any questions? One of the things I recommend, if you can, is to write by hand, because when you write with whatever hand is your dominant hand, it crosses over your brain hemispheres in a different way than if you're typing. It doesn't mean you have to draft all of your creative work by hand, but especially in these blast writing sessions where we go really fast and intensely, usually something more creative will happen. You don't have to, and you can definitely type. I'm just giving you that recommendation because of the science behind it. Okay, so I want everybody to take a chance to get comfortable. We're going to do a couple of deep breaths to sort of get ourselves focused and ready to be thinking about it was fun being. If it fits into your story and you can advance your story, great. And if it doesn't, just write whatever comes to mind. So we're going to breathe in deep through our nose. So big. Hold it up there at the top for a second, then breathe out through your mouth. Just a big, long exhale. And when you think that you've exhaled all the way, just exhale a little bit more. And when you're ready, breathe in through your nose as deep as you can. Have a little asthma, and out through your mouth. I can't breathe nearly as deep and long as other people. And then one more time, deep through your nose. And out through your mouth. Great. I'm going to find my timer. And we're going to, oh, that is not the way to do it. Very disappointed that Android decided to do Android 12. Now I can't find anything. Okay. When you get ready, the prompt is, it was fun being. Go. You might want to turn off your, you might want to mute your sound so that your sound doesn't come in for other people. I'm going to mute you all, so you'll have to read. Your next word is village. Horror stricken. Horror stricken. Goose. Seized. Crawling. Yes. Intended. Chairs. Woman. Judicial. Ice cubes. Last one with a minute left, fooling around. Okay, do your best to wrap things up. All right, I'm seeing a few eyes coming up. How did it go? What happened? I muted you all, so you'll have to unmute to talk to me. Randy, you're still muted.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Was it? Good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty neat.
Anyone else?
Some of the words I was like, I don't know how to add this in here. It definitely took me in a different direction that I thought I was going to go in.
Yeah. Which is kind of what's great about it, right?
Yeah.
Allison or James, any thoughts?
Oh, I had some distractions, so I didn't get as far as I had hoped.
Is part of that distraction in front of you now?
Yes, and somebody was down here doing laundry, so.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so that was weird. I mean, I literally was doing the pointing job. So your words ended up being like, so you started with, it was fun being, village, horror stricken. I finally actually started moving my finger because they were all like horrible words. It was going to be Halloween all the way around. It tells you something. Like, stories that are successful tend to be a little bit dark or a little bit not positive. So then we had goose, seized, crawling, yes, intended, chairs, woman, judicial, ice cubes, and fooling around. And that's a lot to do. I think 20 seconds. I mean, I went a full 20, sometimes 25 seconds every time. And it was still, I could tell it was really fast. So does anybody want to share what you ended up with?
Yeah, I'll start.
Okay.
I'll start.
Thanks, Randy.
Okay, so I'm just going to read it out.
Yeah, that's what we do.
All right. So it was fun being ahead in the village election for mayor. But I was horror stricken when my ex-wife showed up with the goose we used to have. With a story about me, and I seized up at the podium and I thought about crawling for the door. Yes, I was on my knees. She intended to ruin me with this story, but I decided to run through the chairs of the audience, knocking the chairs down in the audience, until a woman stopped me at the door and said she had a judicial summons for my divorce. And I sweat ice cubes before, what would I write there? Let's see. Right there, as I heard the last bit of the story of my wife's story about me and the goose fooling around.
That's hilarious. I am so impressed by the way that you just let that story do what it needed to do with the words that came through. Like I would have guessed that you intended all of the words that ended up coming through. What do you all think?
Yeah, that worked. I mean, definitely.
I know, as soon as we started, I was like, oh, he's going to be able to use judicial, because that was the one I was having a hard time. I was like, oh man.
I should have told you can skip any of the ones you want. Oh, there we go. What was your favorite line from Randy's piece? Your favorite image, or what stuck with you?
Sweating ice cubes. That's a good one.
Me too. Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. So why do you think that one is so powerful for all of us?
Because you can feel it. It's like when you're nervous, but your body has gone cold, but you're still sweating because you're nervous. I just know that feeling.
Right. And sweating ice cubes is a rhetorical device, right? I mean, yeah. So rhetorical devices do that for us. That was well done with that special sweating ice cubes, which is, I mean, almost synesthesia too, right? Because you can't really sweat ice cubes, but he is, because you're freezing. Yeah. Fantastic. That's okay. Who wants to follow that? Anybody else want to read?
I'll go.
Okay. Thanks, Christine.
It was fun being like children for the day while we explored the village that we grew up in, stumbling along horror-stricken brick paths, roots tripping us up as we seized each other by the arms. Rats crawled along the alleyways where the shops threw their trash. Geese filled the sky, flying south. We intended to stop in each store, sitting in the worn chairs of the cafe while we stared at the woman carefully rolling out the door behind the counter, judiciously spreading flour all around, slipping ice cubes into our steamy mugs of tea to cool them down so we wouldn't burn our tongues. We staggered laughingly into the toy shop and fooled around with the cheap plastic cars, making them zip down the aisles, running into the other customers' oil-slicked shoes.
Cool.
Nice.
Nice. Okay, so what do y'all think? What stood out to you? What images are, the ones that you're taking away from Christine's reading?
I like the horror passages, or the horror. What was that? The
horror-stricken brick paths.
Yeah, I like that. I like that because it kind of added something to a story that was pretty much nice and flowing, but then it made you stop and think, well, wait a minute, horror, what's going on here? What kind of horror could be in this village that seemed so nice and calm? And so there's an undercurrent there that makes you think about that.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Just in general, like the amount of description she was able to weave in while still using all of the words was impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was.
Most of the words. Sometimes, I'll throw out a word and you don't have time to get it in there, but somewhere in the middle, I think seized didn't happen.
I got seized. I didn't get yes.
That's it. I know that right in that list. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I was like, I don't even know where I could put that.
One of the ones that I loved also, so my first one was horror-stricken brick paths, because that puts this underlying hint that this childhood village isn't perfect and that there's something else that's going to show up in this story. It's like one of those early clues. But also the oil slicked shoes told us that, you know, people had been walking where there'd been cars, and there must have been some rain, and then the oil must be floating. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these details. Suddenly the day turned wetter and colder for me just for having that detail of oil slicked shoes. So look at how cool, like, if you're wondering how to put some rhetorical devices in your work, try the flip through the book finger game and make yourself use a word, because obviously look what happens. This is great. Okay, does anybody else want to read?
I'll read.
Okay, thanks, Allison.
All right. It was fun being the village idiot. Nobody really knew how intelligent I was, but I could see their horror-stricken faces when I did my last act. I tried riding a Canadian goose. I seized the dastardly bird by the neck and started crawling away from the pond, bird in tow. Yes, it was fun being the village idiot. I never intended for it to go this far. The chairs were full at the town hall meeting. A woman with short brown hair who looked judicial sat up front. Mayor Elaine Court. Ice cubes clinked in her glass as she took a drink of her water. It wasn't water, though. I'd just been fooling around. I didn't know she was allergic to alcohol. At least these padded walls are better than a prison cell. Maybe being the village idiot has its perks.
So she died from drinking alcohol?
Yeah, because why not?
Why not? Because you can, right? You wrote it. All right, thoughts from you all first.
I liked how it seemed, you're right, it like made it seem super lighthearted, like I'm the village idiot, I'm like doing this with the goose, and then it just turned dark. It was like funny, but I was like, whoa, all at the same time. That was really good. I liked that.
Me too.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I felt like we had a clue that it could go another direction except for fun when she said it was fun being the village idiot because no one knew how intelligent I was. And I was like, oh, there's a lot more to this person than just grabbing geese and crawling. Well done. I'm so impressed. That
Thank
is
you.
James. Do you want to share, James? And nobody has.
No, I had a lot.
You were too
I only got
distracted.
through like a few of the words, so
Yeah. Okay. Maybe for the next one, if
yes,
nobody's able to do laundry. Yeah. So one of the things that you could do, and you don't have to, is if you had something you particularly liked that came out of this writing, the next step in the improv writing prompt is to actually take something you love out of it, like just a line that came that surprised you or was the most interesting line to you, and you can use it as your launch off point for your prompt. But also, if you don't have one that you feel that way about, I have one for you. So like for James, because you were distracted, you could use this. Or if you just would rather use this one, this is the one we'll do. So I'm going to set the timer again. It's for 5 minutes this time. Last time we did 6, so you have a little less time. And the prompt that I can give you, well, first, okay, if you're going to use your own, go ahead and write down the one you want to use so that you're ready to start. And then the one that I'm bringing in, it just says, and I'll hit it in the chat now, I brought you here because. So either take your own piece out of the previous or use, I brought you here because. And I'm starting the timer now. You have about a minute left. Okay, do your best to wrap things up. Time's up. Allison's there. So on weekday mornings, there's a poet in the Los Angeles area that holds a somatic meditation and writing prompt. So I do that, and it's 8:30 in the morning Pacific time. And we meditate for, I don't know, probably 20 minutes. And then she gives us a writing prompt and we write. And so I know how you feel because we write for 5 minutes and it's not very long. Okay, we have all faces. Does anybody want to share what you got? I see James breathing. Did you get something this time? Do you want to kick it off? Oh, I muted you all. I'm sorry. So we don't have to hear each other. I apologize.
Okay. Yeah, sure.
Great.
All right. So I brought you here because you need to know what's happening with your father. He's been getting worse lately, and I fear you may have to make a decision soon. I see. What have you noticed in your conversations with him? He's confused often. One time, he forgot my name. I'm afraid it's worse than that now. He can't even get up on his own anymore. We can't keep him here forever. He needs more specialized care. Well, I can't take him in. Do you have a recommendation?
That's a great start because that's all dialogue and we can tell who each person is.
Yes.
Fantastic. What do y'all think?
I think you did a great job of doing dialogue without letting the tags do. I mean, you didn't really have any tags.
Yeah,
so
right.
You didn't have them do anything, which I know I have trouble with because I like to overuse tags and have them like do way too much. So I really appreciated how you did that.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I like the way it just kind of flowed. It just went from one, thought to the other, and it was real easy to follow. And who was saying what. It was great. I liked it.
Did you want to say anything, Allison?
No, I just agree with them.
Okay. I just didn't want to interrupt you if
person.
you did. Great. Yeah. So what a great exercise to show us that we don't need a lot of tags. And the other important thing, of course, about dialogue is it really shouldn't exist unless it advances the story. And every bit of that dialogue was advancing a story about changing medical circumstances for somebody's father, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent start. I hope that that's helpful to you. Obviously, I'm still getting to everybody's options, but maybe it's one of your options. I don't know. Okay, does anybody else want to read?
I'll read again.
Thanks, Allison.
Preface this by I've been listening to a lot of true crime podcasts and it's almost Halloween, so it's dark again.
Okay, fair enough.
I brought you here because we need to talk. I looked at my ex-husband with curiosity and dismay. What did the bastard want to talk about? Hadn't we said everything in the courtroom last fall? Most importantly, why did he force me here at all? Edward, put the knife down. I'm here. Let's talk. My voice was shakier than I'd hoped. I needed to stay calm. His eyes flared with a swirl of conflicting emotions: sorrow, pride, regret. The strongest was rage. Amanda, it's not too late for us. Take me back. We'll go somewhere far away and just start over. Nothing is here for us. My jaw dropped. No, he didn't. He couldn't. The knife glinted in the sun as it broke from the clouds. Red. Edward, where are our children? Sorry.
That's dark. That is so dark.
Like I said, true crime podcast and Halloween. So
it's good. It's very good. Oh. Oh. Okay, so I want to hear other people's thoughts first, and then I'll tell you some thoughts of my own, which are fun.
What an ending. Just wow. I mean, what a great way to leave that off. I mean, wow.
Yeah, so one thing about flash fiction, which is what all these end up being because you don't have enough time to write more than flash, is that there should be a surprise at the end. There should be we didn't expect it to go that way. And it's definitely doing that. I feel like you should be throwing that at a couple of flash magazines right now, but it's probably too late for Halloween, but it's great. But it doesn't have to be Halloween. It's just a nice murder story.
I'm a big fan of thrillers, so I was like, ooh, this is good. But I also really like the detail of like the knife glinting as like the clouds parted. I like that line stood out to me. But overall, I just thought it was really good. I was hooked in.
Thank you.
I don't want to interrupt. Do you have anything, Randy?
Yeah, but it didn't quite materialize the way that I wanted it to, but I'll read what I got.
Oh, hold on really quick. I just thought I was asking if you had anything for Allison. I want to say a few things real quick.
Yeah,
and then you can go.
Oh, okay.
Then I accidentally called you out to read next.
Yeah, I like the fact that right off the bat, I brought you here, and there was a tension. Right in the beginning of the story about her and her ex-husband, and you're like, well, okay, so he brought her here. Why, right? So, and I thought it was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. I like the tension from the beginning.
Yeah, and one of the big compliments I want to have is that you opened with dialogue, but instead of like using the fact that her voice was shaking as one of the dialogue tags, which would be our first instinct, you waited and said, like, interior monologue, my voice was shakier than I wanted it to be. And we're all like, oh, something's going on. She's nervous. And you brought it to us in a way that's more palatable for a reader than saying, my voice shook or whatever, right? So that was really nicely done. The one little thing in there that I would, in revision, take another look at is that idea that my jaw dropped. And I say that because I think we say jaws drop a lot, but I think showing it in writing is more effective than saying it. So it's a thought like, how would you show instead of telling us that the jaw dropped, right? Which, I mean, we're doing instant flash writing here, so it's just advice. Jaw dropped is a great place to start, and that's why we revise. Okay, so you're on, Randy, because I called you out. Ready to read?
Yeah, okay. So I brought you here, little brother, because I needed to borrow money. And I know if I asked you in front of mom and dad, she would start again about all the money her and dad spent on my detox. And that's as far as I got.
Oh, what do y'all think? Thoughts from the group?
I mean, it's definitely something you can see. I mean, it definitely, it's kind of like towing that that sort of social line. There's so much to unpack there. You can kind of get a sense of the shame, and of the problems. There's like a lot of history that you can really unpack from just a few words there. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping somebody would say, is there's a huge story, that we all know is out there just from a few lines, right? Yeah. Did you want to add anything, Christine, or I'll talk? Yeah. So what I loved is that as I start reading all of your work, or if I'm listening now, my brain is going, okay, so little brother, big brother, great. Mom and dad, I'm like, oh, how old are they? Like, is he asking for money so he can go buy a baseball glove or something? And then the word detox, and boom, the scene just solidifies into, I know exactly what this is. And, they're probably in some kind of like shady part of town. And, because this guy is, well, or something good's happening. But right now I mistrust the guy that's asking for money from his little brother, because they usually, are coming out of detox and wanting money for the wrong reasons. If it was for the right reasons, his parents would probably still support him, right? Or her. I just made an assumption it was an older brother, but it doesn't have to be, right? Nice. Wow. So there's a huge story behind that. And I love that. Like, that's a great thing to get us thinking all the way through those steps. We're hooked because we're finding out that it's something very complex. So we had James and Allison and Randy and Christine. Do you want to read?
I did not get to dialogue because I'm not good at dialogue.
It's fine. It's fine.
I don't mind reading. I'm just letting you know. Okay. I did not complete the assignment.
No, I said if you can do dialogue, you can. I mean,
okay. I'm so bad at it that I didn't know where I was going. I kind of tried to continue with what I was writing on the last one, so it was just more of like stuff on the paper. I brought it here because I wanted to unearth the mysteries that the village held. There was more than just the bumps in the night that sent small children running in fright to their parents' safe, sleepy arms. Here, people suddenly would disappear into the gray mist that surrounded the village and never returned. No one that lived there knew what happened to them, and no one ever talked about it. I remember being hushed by my mother with the offer of sticky toffee that clung to my fingers when I asked about Mr. Wilson, the mail carrier, who was suddenly replaced by Lestat, the ghostly pale man that delivered the mail before the sun rose.
Ew. We all know Lestat is a vampire.
I couldn't think of a good name.
No, I just meant that, and he delivers it before the sun rises. That's all I mean. We know what's happening. Okay, thoughts?
I like how it played off of what you last wrote. We get a clearer picture of the village from that story as well. So it was nice.
Other thoughts? What images maybe stand out in your mind?
The sticky toffee.
Yep.
Nice. Yeah. Did any of you wonder if the pre-dawn Lestat is in a postal uniform? Because I did. Just trying to picture a vampire in a postal uniform. The thing that for me really hooked me is that nobody ever talked about it. So we had just gone from a village that, yes, had horror-stricken brick paths, but kids are playing in the toy aisle. Like, there's still a normalcy that exists, at least in the daylight there. And now we realize that this gets to be a mist-filled village, like surrounded village, and things go wrong, but nobody will talk about it. And when no one will talk about it with children like that, what does that imply? Is that a hard question? Like, if every adult is not talking about it, what does it imply?
I think it implies that there's a secret amongst the adults that they all know about, that is not is probably not good.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at. So it's kind of cool because Christine's, pushing towards this larger implication of adults understanding what's going on, but being unwilling to share it with their children. But it must be really nefarious because these people never come back. And I don't know if you're kind of riffing off the movie The Village, where all the adults knew. Oh, have you not seen that?
No.
M. Night Shyamalan, what's his name?
Yeah.
M. Night
Shyamalan.
Thank you. And I saw that movie in the drive-in in Maryland, and I don't recommend it because we were surrounded by the exact trees of the village itself. Yeah, and so they all had a secret that was really dangerous in a lot of ways, and they kept it from the children, and then it gets sort of found out. Sort of. I highly recommend watching the movie. It's a good Halloween movie, I think. It's very scary in parts. Although people are very disappointed by the twist, but I liked it. That doesn't mean that you have to. I have pretty simple tastes. So this is really exciting. You wrote some surprising and really great pieces that got all of us thinking and engaged. Although it's the other one. And engaged us in like elements of fiction and things that are important in our writing for this class. So I appreciate for the opportunity for us to talk about these different parts of the class. Do you have questions for me about English 529 or about writing or anything that we can do to add on to the end of this generative writing workshop?
So I've been trying to do something like this, every morning, just because I really don't make time to write during the day. And so I've been trying to start that as start off my day. I really liked what we did today, where you just like picked random words every 20 seconds. Do you have any other ones that are kind of like quick like that I could, or any of us could use?
Yeah, and in fact, one of the things that you can do is record yourself over 5 minutes doing that for like 5 or 6 of them. And then you can create your own, because you won't remember the order of the words. You might have a general sense of them, but if you make several of those, then you can play them and do it to yourself that way, which is nice. Or you could have a timer just set, how you can get an alarm to beep every 20 seconds and have something like a radio playing in the background and pick up a word from there. So, or, have a book and then you get a word, but, it's better if you don't have to lift up your eyes or finger from the page, if the word can just happen to you. It's really helpful. There's also a ton of writing prompts out there on the internet. And so what's most important for you is to set a timer and then pick a prompt and start, instead of giving yourself any time to think about it. It's the pressure of saying start writing now that I think is the most effective thing about this kind of writing. And then a technique of either starting with a question or starting with an action or starting with a philosophical thought. If you give yourself 3 different ways you could start, that's something that might help you kick off into that 5 minutes of writing well. But I actually do this for 10 minutes at a time. And don't even let your pen pick up, or if you're typing, don't let your fingers stop, and make yourself write the entire time. For 10 minutes, I start wearing out a little bit at the end of it. Like I'm kind of like, but it's worth it. And all of it leads towards writing that I can use. And maybe that physical writing isn't exactly what I'm going to use, but ideas that are emerging or techniques that pop up, all of those are helpful. Like something about the pressure helps me write better. And I have a lot of, like, for example, we do these mix and meets with Birch Bark Editing, and we do the same kind of prompt driven event. And yeah, people claim that they get some of their best writing out of it. A couple people have published flash pieces from their revisions from those workshops. It just works. So, and then I thought I put in the chat one more, it's kind of 2 more. another prompt that you can just use, or something that might be useful for your work. And I wanted to throw it in the chat in case you wanted to cut and paste it and put it in, something you want to work with. So 2 new prompts are: consider a walk you or your fictional character have taken many, many times. The walk from your apartment to work, for example, the short route from your desk job to the closest washroom, a hike you have taken over and over, anything you know back to front. And then write this journey in painstaking detail. Constrain yourself only to the physical details, your surroundings on the walk in question, your body. This is important. Only include details that are accessible through the senses, not reflective, and write about it in excruciating detail. And this is a great way for you to push into description and sensory detail, which is something we're working on for Module 3, but is a graded element every time you submit creative writing in this class. And it should be, because it's essential to any kind of writing that you're hoping to get published. One thing that you can do then, which I haven't put in the chat, is you can take this and reverse it then, and only follow this journey through the psychological experience of it. And while you could remove yourself from the physical details that time and follow yourself through the psychological journey, and then read both versions of them and find what you find is the most attractive. Would the best thing be to revise it to include both interspersed with each other? Is the mental one less useful? Are you using sensory details that aren't necessary? Like, examine the elements of fiction in the work that you've done in both of them and find out how you could use them. And that's because I like to leave you with something to write with when we go. And I read it out loud for the people who are watching the recording, because you may not, I don't post the chat, so. All right, any more questions? Anything that I can help you with? I'm so excited you showed up. I'm planning on doing another one in 2 weeks. So it's modules 1, 3, 5, because we turn in 7, and then we'll do one more right at the end of 7, going into 8, to do the final workshop. So there's 3 more, because this is module 3, right? Yeah. So every 2 weeks, if you can fit it in your schedule, that's great. I believe it does not bump up against Thanksgiving, so, but I'll check. So if you want to come, just plan on it every 2 weeks, and we'll meet up here and do more writing like this. It's mostly talking a little bit about the module, and then doing these practice burst writing events. Okay. All right. It was really great to meet you all kind of in person. I hope I can see you again if you have the time. And good luck with ending module 3 and starting up on your first draft of your short story for module 4. I'll be seeing you soon in the grading area, because that's what I'm headed off to do next.
Okay.
Okay, have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.